Good evening. I am Coach Mo, and this is the Evening Social Podcast. And I'm here with the original Big Red, Matt Kleinman. And we are streaming on our Agenda Club TV YouTube channel. Be sure to subscribe. Tonight's live stream is brought to you in part by New Wall Street. It's an investment education community. Tonight's episode is brought to you by Wilson's Pizza and Grill off of 1801 Quindaro Boulevard in KCK. And we are here in the beautiful Kinship Cafe, our venue host for our Evening Social Podcast, 719 North 6th Street in KCK. Matt, I appreciate you being here.
Thanks for having me.
Oh, man, lovely. We're going to get right into it, man.
Sounds good.
Okay? This is our live stream segment, so we got to get into it. We were talking just a minute about you being in high school, playing for Coach Campbell, Blue Valley West. Let's take a little bit about your senior year, okay? Senior year, as you're coming through your senior year, what were your thoughts about college and where you were headed?
So, if I'm being honest, basketball wasn't a factor at first.
Okay.
I was really, at my core, I'm a nerd. And I was creative as a kid. And so I thought art class would be the kind of thing that I'd want to do. And so I had an art teacher, Mr. Larry Wayland, who said, Matt, you're no good as an artist. You got to think about architecture instead. And that took me on a route where at that moment in time, I was getting recruited by different schools, nobody big. And, University of South Florida, University of UNC Wilmington. And the one I was closest to was Pacific University. And they said, hey, Matt, come out on a full ride scholarship, play, 4 years and get an art degree. I was this close to doing it. And then out of the blue, I got a phone call from Roy Williams' staff. Joe Holliday reached out to me and said, hey, Matt, we remember you were, local kid, you're in your senior year, you're a big kid. We'd love to have you out of North Carolina. Would you like to come walk on? And I thought about the time, and my brother was like, hey, go meet Michael Jordan, get to be a part of a championship team maybe. But then I looked at what the out-of-state tuition cost for a walk-on. I said, I can't do that. But it made me pause and think what kind of experience I wanted in college. And I thought that, maybe art isn't really the thing for me. Maybe I need to think about something closer to home where I could do something like an architecture degree. And right at the right time, a week later, Coach Tim Jankovic on the KU team, Boo Richardson's coach, calls me up and says, hey, Matt, we hear you're a good local kid. We got a new staff. Coach Self's a new coach at KU, but we hear you're a big kid. You got a good GPA. Why don't you come walk on in Kansas? And it took me all of a day to make that decision. It was really easy for me to say I could be close to home. It's probably where it ended up anyways, but it was more, this aligned with my goals as a person. I wanted to be an architect at the time, and I thought, this is going to be a great opportunity. And how do you say no to Kansas basketball when you're a kid who's grown up in Kansas?
Okay. So I got to repeat this. Because this is something that stood out, and it's in my notes. Ask about this. You passed up, you turned down a full ride scholarship to University of Pacific to be an invited walk-on to KU. All right. And then you redshirted your first year. Mm-hmm. Okay. So walk me through, and this is why I'm asking this. Yeah. I'm asking this, so let me give you the reasons why I'm bringing this up. I'm bringing this up because I believe in choices for what your strengths are and for what your path will be. Not choices on just because this is what the normal people are doing and this is what's going, because every one of us don't have a certain path. But what makes us successful is making guided choices for where we want to be, have a path and knowing where we want to be. And it seems like that was the first guided choice for you. And so I want to kind of, once again, talk about the thought pattern of why pass up this full ride to be a walk-on, and you're going to have to pay for some school to figure out that. Talk to me about that.
Well, first and foremost, being a walk-on at KU was only an option to me because my parents were able to support my education. In-state tuition is a lot less, but it was still an expense that they carried for me. And I was on a scholarship for about a year and a half of my time. And then they took it away because of a penalty where Drew Gooden had received benefits, and then they penalized KU years later, and that was my scholarship they took away. But my rationale for doing 5 years at Kansas was simple. It was academic. The master's in architecture program was a 5-year degree. And I thought, I don't want to not play at all my freshman year as a walk-on, because we talked before the live stream. I was an average, maybe above average high school player. And then I jumped to Wayne Simeon, Keith Langford, Aaron Miles, practice player, right? So even for me, that was a huge jump. And the way they informed me, the coaches were great. They said, Matt, trade your worst year for your best year. You're going to get a 5-year degree. Don't sit on your 5th year not doing anything, just school. I went to graduate school after that. But we can have you for 5 years. You'll get more playing time your 5th year than you would your first year. You'll be a better player by then. So it was a combination of, I had a 5-year degree in front of me, and I thought, how much better would I be my 5th year playing for KU than I would be as an 18-year-old who's way out of his element in that space. It took me a while to kind of catch up. It took me about 3 to 4 years where you're a coach, you can see who fits and who doesn't. It took me about 3 or 4 years when the system was like in the back of my head, and then I knew what my strengths were. I'd hit the weight room. I was mentally tough. I felt like I belonged. That 5th year was really only a chance for me to have an opportunity to really see what I could do. I played with 17 pros, so it wasn't about me either. It was about being a part of a team, being a part of a family, a culture. So sign me up for another year if I can make that work. It worked out in my favor. I got lucky that I was on one of the best KU runs ever.
Yeah, nice. I like that. I like the understanding of you took for yourself, and what you wanted. 5-year degree, you made a decision about that, knowing this is the degree I want at the end of it, all those things. And then I love, what I really love about this, and I preach this a lot, is self-awareness. Understanding where you are and where you go. I never knock dreaming and wanting to be anything, and sky's the limit. But just understand where you are when you get into a situation and go. And I like that. I'm gonna ask you 2 questions, and we're gonna talk. We can talk forever about KU.
I don't think people know that we said in the stream earlier, but you used to coach against me. So
yes, I did.
I'm really curious.
Yes, I did.
Did you think that I made the right decision, honest, when I did that?
So yes, and this is why. All right. So before you, I was coaching at Sumner Academy, and Jeff Hawkins made a similar decision to go walk on, and go. And at the time when Jeff was making that decision, he could have went to Indiana State, where another one of our basketball players, Keelan Block, had been and had some success, and Jeff could go right in scholarship. So when he made the choice, it was like, why would you make the choice to go walk on whatever? And one of the things he said was that he would have a greater support system when he left than he would have leaving from there.
That's true. That actually was a factor in my decision too. I knew what KU meant. My brother, Derek, had played 1 year at Rockers baseball. When wasn't for him. College sports isn't for everybody. It's a job. It's a 6-day-a-week, grind it out, physical job. He left Rockers baseball and went to KU. And so in the back of my head, I was always thinking, well, where do I want to go to school? Sports isn't an issue. Where am I going to get the best degree? Where am I going to have the best opportunity to succeed in life? And that was Lawrence, Kansas, because they had a great architecture program. There's a great opportunity for me to be close to home with friends. I could succeed there, and then there's a network that I want to be a part of. So absolutely. I had a high school coach that told me he thought I made a mistake. A strength coach, Pat Fitzgerald, said he thought I made a mistake not taking the scholarship. And then a couple years later, he said, I was wrong, because what you were able to be a part of is so much greater than what you would have been just trying to be your own person. Like, you bought into a system that's paid dividends. So I feel like I made the right decision.
I do
but
too.
It's not for everybody. I get that.
And it's not, but I do and I guess part of what I'm trying to say is the fact that you were able to see your vision of where you wanted to be. What it was, it takes because a lot of adults can't even do that. So to be a 17, 18-year-old, and I know you got parents talking to you, weighing things out. So to be able to do that and understand why you're doing that and not go, because immediately with the walk-on term, you immediately know that I might not be playing. That's one of the hardest things for an athlete that's been a starter for 3-4 years, a leader on this team, and come to go to where I might not be playing. I may not even make the team because I still have to walk on. I may not, So all these are in your mind. So the confidence level and then the understanding of why I'm making this sacrifice and then what really is the most important. See, academics was really the most important choice you made.
Right.
KU and basketball was a plus.
Yeah.
So,
and it was also, I'm fortunate to have been raised with, by a great family and a great environment where adversity was not something that I naturally came into. I mean, 6'9" as a kid, sky's the limit if you want it to be. KU basketball was adversity for me. It was like you got to compete at a level that you're not ready for, and so I had to grow as a person, build up some confidence in myself, which is carried with me. I mean, nothing I can do in life is going to be harder than playing for Coach Self for 5 years. Nothing is going to be more shocking than trying to compete in front of 16,300 people when you've sat on a bench for 2 hours and all of a sudden now you got the last 10 minutes of a game to show off. Like there's some inner building that I was able to be a part of by adding that adversity to my life, and so I'm very fortunate. I'm glad it worked out the way it did.
Yeah,
so I got lucky in that way too.
Well, good choice, good decision. I think it was a great decision for you. And go. Question. When I just want to get into a couple questions, and because we can talk about this all day long, but I really want to get into Wyandotte County and your move and choices and what you've done. But I would be remiss if I don't talk about a couple things. First, I got to talk to you about. Tell me, what is your favorite personal memory at KU?
There's too many to name. Winning a national championship, probably tops, just the experience of being a part of that.
Okay. Now you brought that up, so we got to say that.
Yep.
So we see that's on the table. Put that up and let the people see. That's that national championship ring. He brought it out today.
Dust it off every now and then.
Dust it off, light it out. We got that championship ring.
Any athlete will tell you this. It's the bond you have in the locker room.
Okay.
The stuff that you can't tell publicly.
I got you.
Those are those experiences that I
was
look back
hoping
on.
you'd tell us another story, though. I was hoping you'd tell us another story on here.
You should have Jeff Hawkins on the podcast sometime, talk about his driving behavior when I was a freshman in college and where he used to take me on the way to Abe and Jake's, what that experience was like. Jeff, I love you. But that was some dangerous driving.
We are working on getting Jeff here. He's coming. He's agreed. We just got to get scheduled. He's at Pembroke.
Coach Hawkins,
yes.
Unbelievable coach. Matt Hawkins is one of the best kids you'll ever see. Watch him out on the recruiting trail. This kid is taller than anybody right now.
Yeah.
Incredible.
So we're going to get him. We've agreed. We just got to get our schedules together. I was hoping you'd tell us about a story with Danny Manning.
Which one was this?
Yeah, when he, I don't want to tell the story, but I read about it and heard about it. I'm like, man, I would love for him to come tell us this story.
I can tell you
when he's going around.
Oh, yeah. That's that might be one of my best ones. So the one that Coach Self would always tell was we got our butts beat by, I think it was St. Joe. It was like Villanova. Curtis Sumter, Kyle Lowry. We got beat by 30. We got snowed in. I had a studio project. Studio's like architecture, like it's the way you become an architect. Mm-hmm. And so we make it back to the field house at 2 in the morning, 3 in the morning, and it's blizzarding in Kansas City or in Lawrence. Mm-hmm. And we get off the bus and I start walking up to studio, Marvin Hall, and Coach Self pulls by and picks me up and goes, "Hey Matt, you want to take me back to your apartment?" I'm like, "No, Coach, I got homework due at 9 a.m. I got to work through the night." And so he took me to class and dropped me off at 3 in the morning. And then he thought I stayed there all day until practice the next day at 6 p.m. And so he gave me the day off and just bragged about me. He didn't know I took a nap and missed my next classes. But that's the story that Coach Self will always tell. But the Danny Manning one was Coach Self. It's 2018. You know, you got pros everywhere. So he goes, Danny, will you go around the room and give everybody the pro prospects? Like you're a judge of their potential. And so he goes.
You said 2008?
I think it was 2008.
Okay.
It was because I remember because it was my 4th year, which was
Okay.
2008, and that was the year that I started taking architecture a little bit more seriously.
Okay.
Because of this conversation.
Okay.
So Danny goes 1st round pick, 2nd round pick, lottery pick, NBA overseas, D League, you know, and he gets to me and he goes, 1st round pick, 2nd round pick, just pass me over. Like not even a thought. And I'm the only guy who got that from. And Coach Manning, I think, was, you know, kind of having some fun with me. But it was also like a really good lesson. Like, nah, Matt, like this is the end of your road with basketball, and everyone's got to face it someday. Mm-hmm. And that was a nice entree for me to say, okay, I got to have a career when I leave here. And so that's what I did. It changed my trajectory a little bit.
Okay, gotcha. The story is not for anything embarrassing or you know bringing up. The story is for the realism, because also what I read that you said it in is you said you took that as an opportunity to change your trajectory of where your thoughts were and what you started working on, and you started making plans for your future.
Absolutely.
Then. And that's I just want to bring that out because that's a reality sometimes that we all have to face. The basketball or football is the air is coming out of it one day.
Yeah.
And we have to make plans for our future. Now, what is the right plan? And when is that? It's all different for us. The ball stops bouncing different times for everyone. But what does it look like when that is over? And that's that true toughness, that grit, that mental toughness that you need to make sure that you're making choices and decisions that lead to after that. And so I like that. I just want to bring that out.
That's something that I took away, is that for me, this is true for the football players I played with, the basketball players, everybody, is that sports was a vehicle. It was a vehicle to get me to where I wanted to go. Mm-hmm. And I was fortunate to be a part of some really good teams that paid dividends. None of my individual accolades are what I'm reaping the benefit from now. It's the team experience of being a part of some great teams, but it was a vehicle that took me on a journey internally and externally where I became a better person, but I also built relationships that to this day I get to tap into and say, hey, like this is a part of what I was part of in my youth. And so I'm very grateful for that experience, but the benefit of sports, not as an into itself, but as a vehicle to get me where I want to go, is something that I think, I didn't have that perspective when I was younger, but I do now.
Gotcha. Another question I want to ask you. What was the closest you ever came to quitting basketball?
First year at KU, I got mono and couldn't touch a basketball, felt like I was behind just stepping on the court, and then all of a sudden I can't play. It was hard. It was one of those things. Like, I played with a lot of other guys that were really talented guys that walked on and then transferred because they couldn't. It didn't sit with them that they weren't playing as much as they thought they deserved to be. Now, some of them stuck it out. One of them is the current assistant coach, Jeremy Case. One of the best practice players in the history of KU basketball. His jumper was so wet. But he never got the opportunity that he might have gotten somewhere else. But he put in the work, and now he's sitting on the bench right next to Coach Self. I know he thought about quitting. I know I thought about quitting. I think it's one of those things that you have to think about at some point or another. But that's part of the adversity, is getting through that, knowing that it's okay. I can get through this. I can get through anything.
I like that. I had to ask you that because that is the reality of a lot of situations that our community youth are in. Sometimes they're in a situation, and I feel that's the easy way out. Mm-hmm. I just feel we always finish something. There's a difference in making a change, and then there's a difference in quitting. Yeah. Those are two different things.
I think, I don't think I quit football. Mm-hmm. I chose to prioritize my time on basketball. Mm-hmm. I think if I had stepped away from basketball, it would have been because I chose to prioritize my time in architecture school. Mm-hmm. When I went to graduate school after KU, I got a couple of random calls like, hey, would you like to come to this random overseas league? You played at KU, you're tall. No, like I want to focus my time. I didn't quit basketball. I just reinvested my time and my priorities into something new. I think for folks that make those decisions, I think that's a smart way to go about it.
I like it. Okay. Tell me 2 more questions, then we're gonna move on.
All right.
Talk to me about. Let me get your best Bill self impersonation, man. We gotta ask that. Give me your best Bill.
So, I'm not in a position to do that because my wife will tell me I can't do accents. I can't do nothing. But I will tell you, if you want to see it, not mine. Nick Bahe, B-A-H-E, played at KU with me for a couple years. He's currently like the next Dick Vitale. He does hands down the best Bill Self you'll ever see, and it's like it's a Southern twang with a lot of Jiminy Crickets and come on, like that kind of.
Yeah.
But you got to have the Southern drawl.
Okay.
With like a little bit of just your face gets real red. That's the way to do it. Nick Bahe does it better than anybody. I don't think people know that video exists, but it's out there on YouTube.
Okay, we'll have to check that out. All right. Okay. Let's move a little bit to as you're getting your major is architecture. All right. You've had a great opportunity at KU, not only with learning and what's happening with basketball and being part of a team, a national championship team, but you're also getting this education in architecture. All right. So when you come with this architecture degree, you finish your 5th year, you're finishing this program, what do you do next?
So back up a little bit.
Okay.
When I was young, like when you do those things where it's like, what do you want to be when you grow up?
Uh-huh.
I wrote down, it's like 5th grade, I want to bring people together in public space to make like the world a better place kind of thing. You don't know what you're talking about.
Okay.
8th grade, I had a teacher who poured into me, and she got me an internship with an architect, a firm in Kansas City called Populous. It used to be called something else, but I go in for a day, and the guy gets the Florida Marlins Stadium, huge issue, they got to fix it. So he says, hey, Matt, just wander around. So I wander around. I get to see a little bit of everything that everybody's working on. And I thought, okay, I can do this. And it was that early exposure, that early opportunity to see something at that age that kind of aligned with what my creative interests were. And then I could kind of see, oh, this is something that people do for a living. Like I could do this. And so fast forward, I thought I wanted to build stadiums. Because here, one of my first year at KU, I got an internship by calling up one of the Populous architects, just cold call him, said, hey, played at KU basketball, can I get a job? I said, well, let's slow down, let's talk. I gave him tickets to the game. His son went to my old high school. It was Earl Santee or West Santee? One of the Mr. Santee. I said, what do you do as an architect? He goes, well, I'm going to meet George Steinbrenner for lunch tomorrow. We're designing the new Yankee Stadium. And that put me on this path towards thinking, okay, I'm going to be a stadium architect. And so I thought that's what my career was building up to. And I graduated in 2009 into the Great Recession, where out of my when I started architecture, people were bragging about how many signing bonuses they got. When I graduated, a few years later, 6 out of 70 people had a job available to them. And I was not one of them. So I saw in advance that was a buzzsaw waiting to happen. So I applied to graduate school at Washington University in St. Louis. And I wanted to study urban design because I thought, okay, if I'm going to design a stadium, I need to know how to design the city around it. And so I went to school for a year and I enjoyed it. I had a conversation with the professor. I said, would you ever hire me as a professor? And he goes, nah, you really need another degree. So I stuck around another year, got to see the world. And then by the time I was coming back to Kansas City, I thought, I want to do more community-based work. But and this might be jumping ahead, so pull me back if it makes sense, but it was years later I was working as an architect, and it was over at the 27th and Prospect, East Police Station. And we were tearing down 4 city blocks. The city was using eminent domain. And I was meeting neighbors talking about, I was trying to get a walking trail, and I was trying to get a community garden and a basketball court, and thinking about like opportunities. and it never made it into the project the way I had no power or control, but I wanted to do something for the community. And I realized I needed to leave architecture as a profession. I started teaching it, but for me, I learned that people in communities don't want sports stadiums. You're going to use $250 million of taxpayer dollars for a building that gets used 8 times a year. It's not a very good investment. People want schools. They want grocery stores. They want sidewalks that their kids can walk to safely on. That's the kind of design that I do now. But it took me going through that journey of seeing how the things that I wanted to do when I was young, build a sports stadium, really moved into, no, I want to build a community. I want to be a part of building what a community wants for itself. And so that's been my arc ever since. But it started with that early conversation about sports architecture, and it's transformed into community health design.
Okay. So as you started to focus on more community health design, how did you get into actually doing that?
So, I was fortunate to be, had an opportunity to teach. I would volunteer my time to go talk to architecture students. And because I
was trying to get you to talk about, so when we talked before, you talked about you had a job and then what happened with this job where you first from, and I was trying to get you to talk about that a little bit, about the job you had and then going into the next phase.
Well, it was teaching for me. That was that transition.
Okay.
And so I was working in Kansas City, working nights as a professor of architecture at the University of Kansas.
Okay.
And so that was what started that path.
Gotcha. Okay.
And pretty quickly we started realizing that Wyandotte County, we're in Lawrence, but there was a group that was doing a lot of health-related work, and they were doing park designs. And so we'd go to their meetings, and they'd say, we're going to design this park. And we'd say, well, who's your architect? And they'd laugh and go, why would we ever need an architect? And I thought, that's something we can work on. So we started bringing our students to KCK, and it started this thing called Dot Agency. That's what I co-founded with my colleagues, Shannon, Chris, and Niels Gore. And so it was this idea that just because I have a design skill, I don't need to build a building to build a community. Sometimes the money's not there. Sometimes you got to build the process. You got to build the vision. You got to tell the story. You got to draw it. You got to get the community together and help translate what their vision is for their community. And so we would do that with students at first, and then I realized, well, these are kids from all over the country, but they're not from KCK. And so I made a shift. That's when I started my PhD, and I made a shift. I was working with the Community Health Council, Wyandotte County. Then I started working with Youth Build. And so that was about working with local youth to get their Department of Labor training apprenticeship program so that they could build local buildings. They worked on a couple houses just around 18th and Quindaro. And then that kind of took me to a different nonprofit and did some food work, and that took me to Children's Mercy, and then to where I'm at now with the health department. So yeah, Dot Agency was really the formative experience for me of learning how to work with communities and how to kind of set basketball terminology. I don't need to be the man. I can support. I can be the guy at the end of the bench that just wants to see the team win. I think that was that process for me with Dot Agency is how do I help the community win? It's the same mentality. It doesn't need to be about me. It's about how do I bring the pieces together so that this community can be successful.
All right. Let's talk a little bit about our live stream. Has been brought to you by New Wall Street, an investment education community. I want to make sure we let them know that, and that we are here at the lovely Kinship Cafe at 719 North 6th Street in KCK. I want to send a shout out to the Waco Panthers, a youth organization out there, Michael Wheeler. Just want to send a shout out to them. Let's talk just a little bit about the relationships that you've formed here and the opportunity you've had, some of the people that you had to be able to build some relationships here. I'm going to let you open it. Let's talk about the importance of some of the relationships that you build to be able to do that. And I'm saying that because you are a welcomed addition here to Wyandotte County. Very welcome. I mean, people speak, when they say the name, they speak of you, and you're invested in being here. Now, you live here. You live here. Mm-hmm. So, but that took a bonding. It took an opportunity to build relationships with people. So let's talk a little bit about that process and some of these relationships that you've built.
Yeah, and I think the narrative that makes sense is just to kind of frame that in the dot agency world. DOTTE, Wyandotte, spatial agency. And spatial agency is that idea of working with communities. So it was an introduction to me. It's like, I can't show up and say, I'm going to design this, this, and this because that's what I want. I really need to get to know the community first. And I had some really good teachers. Steve Curtis worked at the community housing in Wyandotte County, gave me a great tour of Wyandotte County and said, hey, this is what community building really looks like. Like, you might think you know, but you don't know until you walk the neighborhoods and see some of the work that he was doing. We had an opportunity, Broderick Crawford. For those of you that don't know, Broderick Crawford's an incredible leader. Unfortunately, he's been really, really sick the last month, and we're all praying for him. He's got a GoFundMe out there that his brother, Alvino Crawford's put together. So if you know Broderick, keep him in your thoughts and prayers. But he worked with us early on, and so they wanted the Jersey Creek Trail over at Parallel Parkway. They wanted to have a park bench. And we could design a park bench, and we asked for money from the CDC. Pre-pandemic, the CDC said, well, we're not going to build a bench. That's sitting. That's sedentary behavior. That's not walking. We want people to walk. Well, that's what the community told us they wanted. So our students at Dot Agency redesigned the park bench so that it was also a fitness trail station. You could do push-ups and pull-ups, park your bike on it. And so doing that process, I meet Rachel Jefferson. I drew a map, and Rachel at first was like, Matt, this is wrong. She said that to a couple times because I got it wrong. And then I learned, I was like, well, why is it wrong? Let me help you fix it. Like, how can I bring my skills to support you? I meet Elnora Jefferson. I get to meet Beatrice Lee over at the Sumner Academy. She sees one of the maps I had drawn. We were doing some work in the community, and she goes, Matt, that's a beautiful map, if anybody understood what it meant. Get to go work, do videos. I do a lot of storytelling, do videos with community partners, and so we're working with Wanda Robinson and Donnie Thomas and Dorothy McField, and just hearing stories, Chester Owens, about the history of the community, about what the Northeast area used to be like, working with Monica Mendez and Edgar Galicia on Central Avenue, and now in Armourdale work. Just getting to love the community, like loving the people in the community. And then seeing that the skills that we could bring would actually kind of lift up their profile, that's what kept bringing us back. So I was driving every day for about 5 or 6 years until about a year ago, my wife and I had an opportunity to move here. So we moved, we're over in the West Side neighborhood. We moved about a year ago. And we're here because the community, it feels like a home. I grew up in Johnson County, but Wyandotte County's home.
We appreciate that. And then from here, you started working with him. When I first heard this, man, I'm not gonna lie. I'm not gonna lie. When we first got to talking, you were talking about, man, I'm with the Health Equity Task Force, and the first thing I thought about, he's with the task force. What do he want to talk to me for? What task force is he on? What is that? What is this task force for? Like, you know. And then I'm like, but it's a health equity test. So like, what is that? What does that do? So help me. You explain it to me. But now we're putting out there. You work with the Health Equity Task Force. Talk about what that is and what that's for.
So I got to give a lot of credit to Broderick Crawford and Rachel Jefferson. They saw that when the pandemic hit, that the very first death in Wyandotte County the very first death in the Kansas City region was in Wyandotte County, and yet the very first testing sites were in KC-Mo and Johnson County. And I think they had conversations early on with Doctors Alan Greiner and Aaron Corbo, the chief medical officers in Wyandotte County. They said, hey, we need to have somebody who's really bringing a health equity mindset to where testing and vaccinations eventually would be accessible to the majority of residents. And so they brought together a group called the Health Equity Task Force. It was based on the work that they were doing before. So there's this report that came out years ago, the Community Health Council did, called the HEAT Report, the Health Equity Action Transformation Report. Mm-hmm. And they built a community advisory board around it. So residents can participate, they still participate on a monthly basis, just talking about stories about how, the history of redlining in our community, how there's, older buildings because of redlining that haven't been reinvested in. So you got lead in the pipes, and how climate change impacts our community, where our combined sewers overflow and can back up into people's homes, and how the home values now have an impact on property tax values, and they have an impact on grocery stores. And so when you look at the life expectancies of neighborhoods east of 635, they're as much as 20 to 24 years lower than west of 635. That's a life expectancy difference that's based on structural racism. And so the Health Equity Task Force is coming up from that space of saying, let's not let COVID be another barrier that separates the community east of 635 from good health, like everything else has. And so they've done, over the last 2 years, pop-up testing, vaccination events. They're getting masks out into the community right now. We got an event at Miracle Temple tomorrow to get free testing for folks that want to come to 2106 Quindaro. Like, getting out into the community has been their initiative. And it's led by community organizations and community members who participate. The health department has kind of been its home. But I've started working with them about 3 months ago. And so to bring it full circle for like, how's an architect doing that? What I've learned over the years is that design can help make decisions. So when we draw a map of Wyandotte County, we say, well, where do we need to have testing and access available? That's me as an urban designer, architect, thinking about the built environment, which, we had an event at Mount Carmel. Mount Carmel hosted us a month ago. They did a great job. We designed the parking lot so people could get their cars in so they could get in and out quickly. We gave food away, gave toys away. The design aspect of it carries through to how the group that I work with, let's make decisions, let's design policy, let's design systems. Let's make sure that nobody knows, no matter whether it's race, your gender, your faith, your ethnicity, that shouldn't be a barrier from you having access to good health. And so that's what I've been fortunate to be a part of. But in a same way, it's almost like, to bring it back to your world, Coach Mo, it's almost like I get to kind of be like a coach or like a support structure, but I get to put them and the community leaders that are part of that group into positions where they get to succeed.
Sounds good.
So it is COVID focused.
Okay. COVID focused.
But I think long term, it's an opportunity for community leaders to say, let's focus on making sure that there's access to good health, and whatever that means for them.
Okay. All right. We're going to continue our conversation a little more, but we're at our time where we're about to end our live stream segment. I appreciate you being willing to be a part of our live stream segment here. We appreciate everyone that tuned in. We must say that this was an enjoyable time. You were listening to our Evening Social Podcast episode with Matt Kleinmann. This live stream segment was brought to you by New Wall Street, an investment education community. We also want to make sure that tonight's episode partner is Wilson's Pizza and Grill on 1801 North Quindaro. Our venue partner is here at Kinship Cafe, 719 North 6th Street. And then our segment partners are Drip Ultra Pure Water, as well as Sweetie's Teas. All right. I want you to know that we are on live on Gender Club TV on YouTube. Please subscribe, and we'll see you next time.